Hello, this is Berhain Selassie, the Orthodox Catholic one. The subject of today's video is the name of Mary. And there's a couple of different explanations for her name, but I think the most compelling one is that it means lifted up or exalted. Anyway, the name of Mary in Hebrew is Miriam. It's spelled identical to two other words in the Hebrew Bible, which is bitter ones and exalted. I'll go through them towards the end of the video. But anyway, the word exalted is derived from the word rum, which means lifted up, as in Deuteronomy 17, verse 20. And here you see it. Rum is right here. Resh, Vav, Mem. And it's referring to someone's heart being lifted up above his brethren. And you can see it right here. Anyway, the Syrian Christians favored the later explanation that it meant lifted up. You can see this, for instance, in the Book of the Bee, which is actually an Nestorian bishop wrote it, but that's his explanation. I'm sure it predates that, but anyway, there's good biblical reason for believing that. Anyway, some have also proposed that it means rebel, or actually a rebel, and it derived from the root meri, which means rebellion, as in Numbers 17, verse 25, and we see it right here. It says, talking about the rebellious children, it says, for a token against rebellious children, and it says right here, the word for children is veni, leveni, and then it says meri, for rebel. It says for the sons of rebel or the children's rebellious children. Anyway, rebel and bitter may possibly be linked, since they both represent the resentment that the Hebrews felt under the Egyptian bondage when they were slaves. Bitter herbs were used to represent slavery in Exodus 12, as we see right here. It says, and they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread. With bitter herb shall they eat it. And it says, it says right here, myrrh, which is the word for bitter ones. But anyway, back to the text. Perhaps if bitter or rebel is the meaning, she rebelled against those of her time by being obedient to God, and certainly she rebelled by not letting her son be killed by Herod. Or perhaps that this could be one of those times where Hebrew words have the opposite meaning of what their primary meaning is, or their plain meaning is. There are many examples in the Bible, like when Job says, Job's wife says, Mrs. Job says, curse God and die. Some translations say, bless God and die, but it's one of those examples where it means the direct opposite. It says, Baruch, or at least derived from that. But anyway, it has the opposite meaning. And then here's another example, where the word means joy, or can mean moan or cry in Lamentations. In which case, the word rebel would perhaps have a meaning along the lines of being obedient, being a loyal one, or a servant, the later of which the Virgin Mary calls herself when she says she's the handmaid of the Lord. The Miriam in the Torah seems to be called Miriam from the word bitter, possibly. I say this because the first time her name appears, it's in the context of talking about bitter waters, the waters of Marta. Because we don't see her name till Exodus 15. Exalted seems to be more reasonable for the Mary of the New Testament. It would perhaps fit in with why Gabriel called her blessed among women, and because she is exalted among them. And it could also possibly be an allusion to her assumption into heaven when she died. A popular explanation, which is stella maris, or stella mar, the star of the sea, among the Latins, was actually a misreading of what St Jerome wrote, which is stilla maris, which means drop of the sea. St Jerome took Miriam as being from mar, meaning drop, which is only used in Isaiah 40, verse 15. It's used right here, and it says like a drop, actually. It says kamar, but anyway, ma right here is the word for drop. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket. So anyway, Saint Jerome took it as meaning drop, and yam meaning sea, as in Genesis 14:13, talking about the Dead Sea, or the Salt Sea, actually. And like for instance, the Israelites crossed the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea, as some say. Also, the word mar can mean myrrh, as in Exodus 30, verse 23. You can check that out for yourself. And mar in Aramaic is actually the word for Lord, Lord or Master. In fact, the New Testament's Aramaic text sometimes calls God Maria. Anyway, you could find this out in the Old Testament Hebrew text in Daniel 4:19, which is 16 in some. And the word meri is used, where the word mari is used. But anyway, lady or mistress is actually older usage, which refers to a respectable woman, not to be confused with a homewrecker today. Would probably be a similar word. In fact, I found a similar word in the Jerusalem or Palestinian Talmud, as some call it, found in Tractate Sanhedrin 23. It's where the word marta is used, which is just like the name in the New Testament, Marta, which means lady. But anyway, first time we see the word Miriam spelled in the New Testament. I'm going back to my original point. What's the name? I'm going to go through all the instances in which this exact spelling is used. Miriam. It says, and Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took the timbrels into her hands, and goes on so forth. That's Exodus 15, verse 20. The spelling of Miriam, no vowels, with no vav, lamed, or etc. prefixes. I mean, before the word, vav would be like meaning and or but, lamed would mean for, or something along, or so on and so forth. Appears 16 times in the Hebrew Bible, so exactly appearing just like this, not including the Deuterocanonicals. I'm not talking about the Deuterocanonicals right now. It occurs 16 times in 14 verses. The name Miriam is used in any form, actually appears 15 times in 13 verses. It's talking about the name itself, and I'm excluding any prefix being added to the beginning of the word, like the vav and mem and stuff like that. There are three meanings. It's translated as bitter and exalted, or just the name Mary, or Miriam. Here are the appearances of the word Miriam, or mem, resh, yud, mem. I shouldn't say Miriam because it's not always pronounced that way. So just gonna go mem, resh, yud, mem. They're going to be found in red, so that exact spelling is going to be found in red. And the underline is a similar word with the root, with the same or similar root. And first example is Exodus 15:20 through 21, which we already said, mentioned earlier in the video. So there's no point in rereading that. It's just talking about Mary, the sister of Moses. The next one is just a few verses later, and they came to Mara, or actually the Hebrew says marta, and you could read it right here. They could not drink the waters of Mara. It actually says mimara, for they were bitter. Miriam, the word there's actually it's Mariam. I made a mistake right here. Therefore the name of it was called Mara, because it was bitter. The next example is actually Exodus 35 verse 24. Everyone lifting up mérim, a heave offering. And then this actually is the root room is being used, a heave offering, terumat. And you can see it right here, of silver and brass, and brought a heave offering terumat of the Lord. And then it goes on. And I use Young's Literal because it's the only one that actually uses the word lift up. Some others just simplify it as offer or brought, which doesn't really talk about the actual word being used. Next example is Numbers 12. 1, verse 4, and then verse 10 and verse 14. It starts off, it's actually all the name of Mary. It's just the name. You could read it for yourself. Exodus 20 verse 1, it's again just talking about when Miriam died, the sister of Aaron and Moses. You can read it there. And then we have another occurrence in Exodus 26 verse 59, talking about Miriam again. And then we have 1 Chronicles 4:17 talking about her again. And then Then we see the same word appearing in Proverbs 3:35. The wise shall inherit honor, but the fool they carry away. And then the word for carry away is mérim, shame. So they carry away or lift up or are promoted to shame. You can look at the various translations. Anyway, next example is Proverbs 14 verse 29, where the word mérim is used for exalted. And he is slow to anger, is of great understanding. But he that is hasty of spirit exalteth mérim, folly. So they exalt foolishness or ignorance or whatever you want to call it. And then the final example is actually in Aramaic. It's Daniel 5:19, and because of the greatness he gave him, all the peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him, whom he would he slew, and whom he would keep he kept alive. He kept alive, and whom he would raised up, mérim, and whom he would he put down. And that's Daniel 5:19. That's actually in the Aramaic 6. It says mérim. And also, I have a link right here to Catholic Encyclopedia for the different discussions on, if you want more information on the word and the name Mary. But anyway, I think lifted up or exalted makes more sense in terms of Mary, because I mean, she's not really described as in terms of rebel, unless you want to say it has the opposite meaning in the New Testament. And drop of the sea doesn't. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain that one. I mean, you could try to link it with Moses crossing the sea and stuff like that, but exalted or lifted up one seems to make the most sense out of all of these, and it's used several times in the Old Testament for the same spelling, mérim, and bitter. Seems strange to call a girl bitter for even though if it has sort of like rebellious or the opposite connotation. But anyway, I think it's most likely derived from vroom, lifted up. Anyway, this is Angel Gabriel, Untitled Catholic 1.